Hey everybody, and welcome to my completely positive review of Lies of P. Don't worry, I'll just save all the negative stuff right till the end, okay? Stop there, criminal scum! Have you violated that like button yet today? Please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It genuinely helps the channel grow. So Lies of P is a third-person action Souls-like made by Neowiz, a studio I knew almost nothing about until this game come out. They made a game called Skull, which I was sort of looking at but never ended up playing. Just the art style kind of turned me off a little bit. So I was really excited to see them making a third-person, action game in the Souls-like style. Lies of P stands apart from its competition in the Souls-like space because of its really unique dark fable or dark fantasy setting, doing a dark remix of the story of Pinocchio. You play as Pinocchio, or P, a puppet powered by Ergo, a mysterious power source that's at the center of the story in Lies of P. P begins his journey by traveling through the ruined city of Krat, which is the victim of two simultaneous calamities. The puppets have frenzied and are attacking basically any living person that they can get their hands on, and there's a vicious petrification disease that's sweeping through the city, causing many people to be quarantined to prevent the spread. The main story mechanic is lying. Puppets, bound by a specific set of rules called the Grand Covenant, are not allowed to lie. However, P has the ability to lie. The story messes with this theme of lying and how lies are connected to being human and the consequences of lying. There's a huge host of characters, each with their own personalities and motivations, and these characters are a very much a strong suit for this game. Even the puppet shopkeeper that sells you stuff has his own storyline and motivations and story beats that happen throughout the game. The story is also a lot easier to keep track of. I found it way easier to make sure that I was progressing everybody's stories easily, rather than having to do like really weird obscure things. I would definitely say that it's a lot easier to get all the different story beats than it is in a game like, say, Elden Ring. Visually, I found Lies of P very visually appealing to me. It's a fantasy set in the Belle Epoque era, which is sort of like pseudo steampunk Victorian type thing going on, which is really fun. There are horses and carriages, but there's also, mechanics and those sorts of things. I just really like those different kind of juxtapositions. It was really nice for me. It really sets itself apart because it really feels like it's hitting a visual niche that is similar to a lot of things that we've seen, but not identical. It really reminds me a lot of BioShock in a lot of ways. One of my favorite things about the visuals of this game is that it feels very grounded and realistic, if you know what I mean. Given that there are, robots and stuff like that. The aesthetic definitely took time to grow on me, but once I was about 4 hours in, I saw that the game was not a one-tone, one aesthetic pony. It had a huge range of environments and settings and enemies that it wanted to show me, and each one of them felt distinct and interesting to look at and felt like a really cool mashup with this, general aesthetic that they were going for. Even like when you get to a factory area, or you get to some ruins, it all feels kind of cohesive together, which is really cool. The sound and music of Lies of P were surprisingly good. When I see an indie company doing a game like a Dark Souls type game, a Souls-like game, I don't tend to expect much when it comes to sound design and music, because that can be extremely expensive to get really good sounding music. This part of it really blew me away, especially for an indie studio. I particularly loved the hit noises and the sound effects of the weapons. They really gave impact and a sense of weight and feeling to the weapons that you were using. The in-game music is also genuinely wonderful, just like the different boss fight themes I thought were really great. And you can also pick up these records throughout the game and listen to different songs, and there's this song called Feelings. It's just, really good song. I was really impressed with the soundtrack. Genuinely really impressed.
Close your eyes, come to me, feel alright, just dance with me all through the night.
I've found myself listening to the OST in my own free time, and that's a pretty big compliment for me. I don't listen to bad OSTs in my off time. So combat is centered around three main mechanics: blocking, perfect blocking, and dodging. Perfect blocking is basically lifted right out of Sekiro, where you block in the right window and you get a nice big red effect. You take no chip damage and you build up some stun on the boss or the opponents. To take advantage of this stun, you'll see that their health bar will glow white, and then you need to hit a charged R2 on them. Blocking is generally more powerful than dodging, but both are really important to use. The game will really punish you for over-relying on one of those three mechanics. This is a big W for the game because I think most games tend to just allow you to use whatever the most powerful option is and don't really ask you to use the other things that they've put in the game. The weapon combining system is something that really drew me to the game in the first place, and this system pays off in a really big way. The system probably, I think, is the most clever part of the entire game, and I think it really sets the game apart from basically any other Souls-like that I've experienced. So the hilt of your weapon determines your moveset and the scaling. So if it's like, C scaling with motivity, then you would get more damage, or, you get how that kind of part works. Your blade determines the reach, your elemental damage, and your damage type, and you want to generally be matching the damage type between your hilt and your blade as well. So why this is a really clever system is, first of all, it just allows for a high degree of personal customization, but it also means that when you have a hilt that you really like and is scaling with the build that you're doing and the stats that you have, every time you find a new weapon, instead of finding a new weapon and being like, oh, that weapon's not for me, that's not a strength weapon, or oh, it's not a, a technique weapon. Every weapon that you pick up, you can just throw that blade onto your weapon, and you keep all the stats and moveset of your hilt, so you can essentially like try in a way every single blade in the game, given that you have the right, sort of hilt for your stat. It's a very, very clever mechanic, so that every single time you pick up a new weapon in the world, there's still something to benefit you, even if you're like, set on using the one hilt that you have. So this allows you to kind of camp with something that you like, but also feel free to like experiment and try new things as you go through the game. And you can also make some silly weapon combos, which is really fun. There's a Monster Hunter style sharpening system, which I think would generally be kind of boring if they didn't add this really interesting mechanic to add elemental damage to your weapon. Like, you basically pick one element, attach it to your grindstone, and then you basically have a once per rest buff that you could apply to your weapon, which is very powerful. And this is just such a real, I remember when I first encountered this, I was so hyped. This is the clip. Grinder? Wait, what? I can customize the weapon grinder? What? Yo, that is tight. That's actually crazy. That's so cool, man. This was just such a nice level of spice on what could have been just kind of a boring mechanic of just like, keep your weapon sharp. It's like, no, here's a benefit for actually like paying attention to that, and you can have a little buff on this thing as well. It's a really clever like remix of that type of mechanic. Enemy variety in this game is a huge plus for me. Just before enemies would become tiresome, I would find myself fighting new enemies. You kind of change areas multiple times, and the enemies change their flavor time and time again. And then I won't say exactly what happens to avoid spoilers, but there's a part of the game where you basically start fighting remixed versions of all of the enemies in the game, and they feel very distinct from the previous times that you fought them. So it's just a really clever way of reusing enemies, but like, yeah, they have new attacks, new behaviors. They're very different. It's a very, very clever way of keeping enemies feeling fresh. So the bosses in Lies of P are on the whole really, really great. I think there's a couple particular examples that I really want to highlight. The Puppet King is a fantastic boss. It's really great because it asks you to change your playstyle between phase 1 and phase 2. That's a very, very, very clever mechanic, and they do that a few times throughout the game. And I really like that between each boss and each phase, you have to ask yourself, what is the different approach that I'm bringing to this boss, and it feels rewarding to figure that out every single time. Okay, so here are some of my final thoughts. My criticisms are going to be here, and then I'm going to give you guys my final score for the game. Okay, criticisms now. Positivity over. There are several bosses in this game that are very mechanically boring and just, I feel, genuinely detract from the game, two of which are the Door Guardian and Victor. Victor just feels like a really generic sort of Frankenstein type Unga Bunga enemy. I guess that he does feel distinct from a lot of the other bosses, but I just really did not enjoy that fight. It's not that it was particularly hard either. It was just like not very fun for me personally. Door Guardian is like, if they just deleted Door Guardian from the game would be strictly better. It's a very stupid boss. Really, really don't like it. One of the big criticisms I would say is that some mini bosses actually feel way harder than actual bosses. The damage that they put onto certain mini bosses, like the Jester with 2 axes, or this guy who deals disruption in the late game. These guys are just insanely hard and do so much damage. It's really weird. I'm fine with enemies being hard. I just like it feels out of tune with the rest of the game. One of my bigger criticisms of the game is that there's this stagger mechanic is a very important mechanic for the game. When you get staggers on bosses, that's a huge punishment window, and getting those critical attacks on people really is a big way that you need to beat bosses. One of my bigger criticisms of the game is that there seems to be a lot of ways that bosses cover for themselves when they are staggered. There are certain bosses where once you stagger them, they'll do a couple attacks to be like, as they're like flailing onto the ground, they'll do kind of a couple attacks and stuff. I don't really mind those because it's like, okay, yeah, you got me with the gimmicky thing, and then you can like anticipate it going forward. What really bothered me is that there were a lot of bosses, you could actually literally see them start a specific move set to cover themselves when they are in a stagger state. A lot of bosses would do this thing where they would get that white bar around their HP, and then they would start immediately doing a 6-hit combo. They would just start doing attacks over and over and over and over and over again, and then by the time their attack settings was over, their stun would be gone. And so you lost, like you might have been working super hard to get that stagger meter up, and then the boss just uses a long drawn out attack sequence to cover for their staggerable state. I noticed this on multiple different bosses that they tended to use these attacks right as they got stunned. I can tell that this is something that the designers put in the game to increase difficulty, and it's just like, I don't know. I personally don't mind if that happens every once in a while or that sort of thing, but I really felt like I could see that in the programming coming out, and it just felt kind of cheesy and disappointing. So for these reasons, for me, I give Lies of P a very, very, very strong 7 to 7.5. I'm gonna say, yeah, I'm gonna offer this here because I know a lot of you are new reviewers and don't know my rating systems. I'm not IGN. I don't give everything a 9 out of 10 when I love it. For me, a 7 out of 10 is a game that is worth your money and is worth playing to its completion, and it's a good game. An 8 out of 10 is something that is doing something really special, unique, and exciting. So games that I've given 8s are like Bloodborne and Armored Core 6, for example. Great, fantastic games that are a cut above a totally enjoyable game. 9s for me are masterpieces. What most people would consider a 10, I would give a 9. 9 just means it's like it is a paragon example of its format. Games that I would give 9s are things like Elden Ring, Far Cry 3, Halo 3, those kinds of like classics that are just like really great games. And for me, I reserve a 10 out of 10 for the criteria for me for a 10 out of 10 is a 9 out of 10 that has changed gaming. So a good examples of 10s for me are Dark Souls 1, Breath of the Wild are 2 10s because after those games came out, there's just everyone going forward is referencing those things as they make games that are even vaguely similar to them. Breath of the Wild completely changed the open world format and what people expect out of the open world game, and Dark Souls completely changed and destroyed the third-person action genre, and it's basically just been Souls-likes ever since. Even games that are still trying to hold their original identity, like God of War and stuff like that, are undeniably drawing from Dark Souls now. So when I give a game a 7.5 out of 10, to me that means a game is very good. And I would also award this game the title of the best non-FromSoft Souls game. I have played Nioh 1. I haven't played much Nioh 2. That's kind of on my radar. People rant a lot about Nioh 2, but yeah, Nioh 1 really didn't do very much to me. So this game, I'm confident in saying this is the best non-FromSoft Souls game. I highly recommend this game. I highly recommend that you play it. Without getting into spoilers, NeoWiz has already hinted that they're going to be doing a second title in the same universe. Some things that I would really love to see in the sequel that would easily make the game an 8 or even a 9 out of 10 for me are things like co-op, online PvP, game modes, things like that, to really kind of add a lifespan. I really think that Lies of P could be that game right now. I think people are going to play through the game, maybe play through New Game Plus and get all the endings, and then they're just going to put it down, which is fine, but like I would love to see them yeah, invest in the game and like build a game that's going to have a long lifespan through multiplayer. I would love to see that. I would also, again, because it is a Souls-like, I would love to see them innovating in those multiplayer systems. So seeing something that's a little bit more original than just sort of summoning people for bosses, which is what is in Lies of P. Just some sort of innovation in that space, I think, would really set them apart as well. Okay, so there you go. Those are my thoughts of about Lies of P. Genuinely one of the best Souls-likes that I have played, especially ones that aren't FromSoft. Yeah, so there you go. That's what I have to say about it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure to check out the channel, hit like and subscribe on the video. It really helps the channel out. I have announced this already, but I am part of the Lords of the Fallen creator program. So Lords of the Fallen is another Souls-like that is coming out later this year, actually very soon in October. And yeah, we're going to be doing a bunch of coverage about that. We're going to be playing that game. We're going to be doing the PvE. We're going to be trying out its PvP systems and just having a blast with it. So yeah, hit subscribe on the channel and stay tuned for all that good stuff. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks.
Hello, Tarnished. Consider clicking that like button and absolutely annihilating that subscribe button because TheKoop is based. Ranny out.